All right, welcome to another episode of the WP Crowd. My name is Roy, as usual, and today we have a cool topic related to marketing and stuff. And yes, I'm not in my normal office today. I'm actually still up in San Francisco. Did a awesome meetup a couple days ago, and just here to visit some family and some friends. So yeah, new space, bad audio probably, but hopefully it still works out. So today is going to be a cool topic. We're talking about advertising specifically. I know that kind of falls into marketing, but yeah, hopefully it'll be a good conversation. But as usual, let's kind of start with introductions.
So my name is Shada Tarabi. I've been in the WordPress community for, almost like 6+ years now. I'm currently the director of marketing for a agency called Web Dev Studios. And in my free time, I run a food blog called Dine with Shada. So lots of good food and marketing to be had through those.
Nice. And Bob?
Bob Dunn, currently podcasting and blogging over at bobwp.com. That's it.
Awesome. And Bridget, I think this might be your first time on WP Crowd, maybe?
Yeah, I think it is. Maybe I have been, but I'm Bridget Willard. I'm a freelance marketer and consultant, and you can find out more at bridgetwillard.com.
Bridget's been a big fan of the show since the get-go, though. So yeah. I don't know. It's kind of weird that you've never been on, but you're probably one of the only original people to have one of our only t-shirts.
Yes, the WP Crowd was part of my WordPress immersion program when I started working for Thought House and Give.
Yeah. Cool. So as I said, we're talking about advertising today. So coming into this, I do have some marketing experience as just kind of like through the years I've done marketing. But my main takeaway was advertising is more things you pay for a specific like force traffic. You know, we say we in the kind of like organic world, there's SEO, social media marketing, which kind of like helps your brand out, and as well as, you know, eventually get people to your website. I've always thought advertising is more the, all right, let me force something in front of someone. Let me pay for something to be in front of someone's face for them to eventually get to my brand. Does anyone want to have another definition or further out my definition, since you guys are all way better at do more marketing than I do?
We're all strangely quiet.
Well, I will add something. I think you kind of were bringing up social media as something separate. I think now in today's day and age, there's a lot of blurred lines, right? And so I think with the introduction of social media and that being more and more of a channel for marketers, now you're of course seeing social media advertisements, not even just through Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, but now even in different mediums on those platforms. I don't know if you're familiar with Insta Stories. You can even have sponsored posts through that. And to me, as a consumer who also has a marketing hat on, that line gets extremely murky because I'll be scrolling through Instagram, and I guess it's the intention of the ad, but sometimes they're crafted so well that you just think it's regular content.
That's when advertising wins, Shada. And you, Gary Vaynerchuk, you know, is the master at this. For anybody who wants to really study up to be native on the platform, whether it's organic or paid. I did run across an epic campaign from the ASPCA this past week on Tinder, actually. Mm-hmm. As I'm scrolling through the people, you see a dog, and all of the advertising about the dog wasn't like, this is Millie and she's been, you know, alone for this long. No, it was like, no hookups, barks a lot, wants to go on dates, likes, you know, this kind of dog food or whatever. And when you press that you like her or swipe right, then it says it's a match. And then you get a message that says roses are red, violets are blue. Thanks for swiping right. You can support ASPCA here. And I thought that is brilliant. Consumers are used to while they're on Tinder. It's like this. So as close as you could get to organic is better. And we did have a very successful campaign at givewp.com because we had this, I would do, my friends are all at word camps organically, right? With a picture of us. Oh, we wish we were there. You know, make friends, take selfies. So Jason, who did the paid advertising, said, what if I throw $50 at this and target it on Twitter to the hashtag to people that are at that camp and geolocate it? Well, what happened was something that started organic that still felt organic was an advertisement that got retweeted, and traffic in that location rose for 2 weeks following the camp. And then we did a second one where I said, what if we all like waved? And then Devin said, let's put it up like the Brady Bunch, a 9x9. We did that. People were retweeting it all over. It was a GIF where we're all just waving, right? Because we called it the Hello campaign. So you can start things organic, then throw money at it, and then be more specific in your targeting. And now it's an ad. So the more that it feels organic, the better the ad is.
It's really interesting. We talk about social media marketing as well, like social media advertising, because again, I've been doing internet stuff for like super long. So back in the day, it was like, all right, if you want to advertise your website, there's Google AdWords, and that was like it. You know, like obviously there was Yahoo and Bing eventually, right? Things like that. But it was like, you want to spend money to bring people to your website, it's Google AdWords. That's like the name of the game in advertising. And so it was like, all right, now you have to do keyword research and you know, things like that. How do I connect my organic marketing campaigns to my pay-per-click advertising, right? Like, how do I connect the two? If you're smart, right? You would kind of try to have those two work tandem with each other.
Yeah.
And starting to look at Facebook advertising lately, and it's a completely different shift, because it's not like who's looking for my business, like what are they typing? It's what interests do people have that fit my criteria. So it's a whole new way of looking at how to look at your people that are coming to your website, like people that you want coming to your website. But it's almost in a weird way, I feel like it's better, right? Because you're not guessing what people are searching for. And while that's really cool, because they're like, okay, I know people are searching for this, they'll come to my website. But it's like, hey, my website sells dogs, right? I have dogs on my website. So let's look for people that are interested in puppies and interested in cute, random other dog stuff that's not even a dog specifically. And, you know, my ad will now be in front of their face, and potentially I'll get a customer out of that.
Well, it really depends on where your people are. Okay. So you have these different, you have pay-per-click, right? And you have LinkedIn ads, you have in-mail ads on LinkedIn, you have pushing forward ads, like, and Facebook isn't just boosting to a demo. You can boost to the people who already like your page. You can boost to the friends of the people who like your page. You can boost to people in a geolocation, and they all have different price points. I mean, at one time, Jason Cannell was doing ads for our clients, $7 on LinkedIn, 50 cents on Twitter, right? And it's everything in between that. So it all depends on what your goals and objectives are, because we forget sometimes it's about clicks, a lot of times it's about impressions. And brand awareness campaigns are very, very important, because you want to be able to say tissue, Kleenex, soda, Coke, copy machine, Xerox. You want that word association, where what is the best plugin for forms, you know, Gravity Forms or whatever, right? So you want that immediate kind of lizard brain reaction. And that's a brand awareness campaign, which isn't measured by clicks at all.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, because I'm listening to this, and I've been doing this for like 20 years or so. And I mean, I was back in the print ad days and stuff. And what we got to kind of look also at from the very start is advertising WordPress products versus advertising WordPress services. I mean, these are two totally different animals, because services, I mean, we've all been there, maybe in both spaces, and you learn kind of how you massage one or the other. And then the advertising, we think of, you know, immediate. So advertising is used to, and I think Bridget's, you know, she's referred to this. Advertising is used to build your expertise, build your brand, build relationships. And then we think too much on advertising as immediate conversions. So it's like, we want to pay, we want to get something out, we want people click buy. And that's slowly becoming more of a challenge because of everything. I mean, I was talking to somebody the other day, and we were talking about how advertisers are not only changing dramatically, but they're going to have to get away from traditional ads are dying big time. And you have to find, I mean, I've found unique ways in the past that people would think of, oh, this is building your brand, this is building your expertise, but they paid more in conversions directly than any ad. I mean, I've paid for ads over the years, and I've wasted a lot of money. And I've done the social, I've done a lot of that building. But I'll tell you, one of the things that was interesting to me, one of the biggest conversions I ever made was doing local workshops. And I'm not talking about speaking at WordCamps or speaking at meetups. I'd go to these workshops, I'd do 2-3 hours, teach them something. Well, you have the DIYers, they're not going to become your client. I have this sector there that are on the edge. And those are the ones that turned into a customer often within a week. They'd call me and say, wow, Bob, that was great, that 3 hours, but you just kind of freaked me out now. I need your help. This is something. And I can't tell you how many times over the years somebody emailed me and said, Bob, you probably don't remember me. I took a workshop from you and I need a website. It's like, well, that was 3 years ago. So there's a lot of, and you really have to, you have to find your own sweet spot. And it's a challenge.
Well, I'm not totally sure that traditional advertising is dead, because Clear Channel has no problem getting people to advertise for billboards.
If you've got the money and the audience, I
right,
guess I'm,
right.
It's the money.
It's about the money, and we don't put aside money for advertising. 15% of sales or whatever to advertising, or 5%, or some people are just put 0%. So all of it matters, but people are spending how much money for radio ads when a lot of people aren't even listening to radio, and then they go to Pandora, then they're not listening to that. So the competition is really about getting yourself in front of eyeballs. And that's why the line's really blurred when instead of paying for an ad, you're paying for a person to do that engagement for you. So in many ways, social media marketing is free, except for when you consider the time, or if you outsource it. But you're still getting your face in front of somebody. You're still competing for the eyes.
Yeah.
I think another thing on that subject, just by bringing up social media, that I'm extremely exposed to as both a, kind of consumer and a recipient of this type of advertising, but influencer marketing. So I think you look at it from both ends of the spectrum. One, I work with very large brands who have budgets, who want to get their product in front of people. So speaking to that, authentic, organic type of experience. So it could be anything from a video testimonial to a photo that I might post on social media. And there is that exchange of money for the exposure on my feed. But on the lower end of the spectrum, speaking probably to more correlate with like a small business owner from the WordPress space, or somebody who doesn't have a ton of budget to spend, they're usually trading. So I'm working with restaurants. They're trading a meal for me to post a photo on my feed that gets blasted out to my audience. And I've just really seen that type of marketing explode lately. And being able to take advantage of it is very low barrier to entry for some companies. And so obviously, depending on what your niche is, depending on what your product is, trying to get in front of the right people. But I think everybody in this space is very familiar with the WordPress community and the dynamic, nature of the community. And so there are certainly people who have risen to be influencers. Bob, I think you're a great example of someone who's leveraged that kind of influencer marketing angle to say, hey, I would love to work with you for a trade, for money, to help promote your brand. And I think that is just a whole new way to be advertising that I think businesses don't really know how to engage with, to be quite honest, a ton, because there's not a lot of rules around it either. I think to deviate on that, you get into the FCC's kind of, disclosing if it's a sponsorship or not. For myself, I'm at such the low end of the spectrum that I don't think the FCC sees me. But you look at influencers like Kylie Jenner, I think had gotten a lot of flack in the previous years just by endorsing something and not mentioning that it was a sponsored post or that she was getting paid for it. And so again, it goes back to blurring those lines of, you can do it. It's totally on the table, but the spectrum is very wide right now.
It happens a lot in the WordPress industry because people get paid to write and review products, right?
Right.
And so if they're not disclosing that, now that becomes an ethics issue.
Totally.
So, that's fine, but it's, so that you're using your reputation as leverage and influencer marketing. So you're trying to get something out of both of it, but that's definitely a way of paid advertising that's more subtle, but should be disclosed for ethics reasons. And it's funny to me, Roy and I talked early on in our friendship and relationship that about this whole concept of open source and that you're giving away your intellectual property for free. And yet we're not so quick to disclose when we're being paid to review something.
Receiving something, yeah.
Yeah, and I think the review thing, and I did that for quite a long time on my site, was paid reviews, is how you actually review. I mean, you disclose. Mine was always at the end. It said this was basically paid for. And I took it as not so much a review, but a look at and an overview. So I wasn't saying, hey, I'm going to swear by this. I'm telling you what this thing does. You make the decision. I'm leaving it in your hands. And because it can be really, your reputation is at stake. Exactly. And you do let people know.
It really depends how you portray your sorry. It really depends how you portray your review, right? Like if every single paid review is, hey, this product or plugin is amazing, then you're going to lose reputation. So you have to make sure that you're honest with it and not just explain what it does, but whether it does it well or not. And then your reputation is going to keep going with you. But the problem is that not everyone's going to want to advertise with you if you're going to be honest about it, because what if their plugin does suck, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's been really interesting, especially with the influencer marketing. You brought that up, and I was dabbling for the past couple months with like Shopify, like doing the whole drop shipping thing, and this is where advertising has been crazy because these like 17-year-old kids are now making like billions of dollars off of like drop shipping from China because they know how to work Instagram to the point where they're paying like $20 to $40 for a shout out, right? Influencer marketing shout out, which is only like a 2 to 4 hour thing. Like someone will post for 2 to 4 hours and then delete the post. But in those 2 to 4 hours, if it's the right niche, right, they'll get like thousands of dollars in sales, and it's ridiculous. This is what kind of brought on my whole thought process even behind this conversation. Was I was seeing that happening, and I'm like, I don't get how this is a thing. Like it was like mind boggling. I'm like, okay. And then I started getting to Facebook advertising and learned Facebook advertising for it. And it was like a whole different realm coming from the last time I did any type of advertising was pay-per-click advertising on Google. It was just like, what is going on here? And then there's one other aspect that we haven't touched about, which I know Facebook does really well. I haven't touched any of the other social media platforms, and this is a really like gray area sore subject. But like that pixel that Facebook injects onto your website, if you're advertising, that tracks everyone that comes to your website. That is, if you're advertising through Facebook, can be like the best friend you've never had, because you could basically take that pixel, and if you have enough traffic coming to your website through really any means, not even paid means, but like you just have Facebook posts that brings in someone, they buy a thing, you can create an ad around the demographic of people that come and buy something. Like you can literally create an ad and say, I'm going to serve this ad to people who are like the people who already purchased something from me. And that's amazing. Like creepy. And
well, not just that, but you have
some level, but
you have retargeting. So like they were there, and the retargeting is not really, it maybe it's creepy, but what about cart abandonment tactics? Like it's the same thing. Like, oh wait, you forgot, you got distracted with the kids screaming in the background, and you forgot to buy this dress on Amazon, right? So it's that kind of thing. But also in the WordPress community, we haven't really talked about WordCamp sponsorships. So that's another form of advertising. That's it's kind of it's a lot of money, because some of the WordCamps of top tier table levels are between $25,000 and $5,000 for 2-day event. Yeah, so that's also ad money.
And that's interesting because you look at, and I know probably you've experienced this, Bridget, and I know I have, is you look at approaching anyone outside the WordPress space that you think may be beneficial. And it's a tough sell because it's a very unique animal. That sponsorship and the ROI on it is people, and a lot of the, I mean, they don't get it. They just look at it like, whoa, this, why am I doing this? And they're looking for numbers. And I've dealt with that. They'll send me these spreadsheets. Can you start filling in all this stuff? And I'm like, whoa, step back a minute here. You're looking at something very different, even conference wise and stuff. But yeah, it's a big investment.
Because it's about, yeah.
I was going to say, even like within the community though, I mean, all of us represent, or have represented businesses who are very active in the space. I think depending on what your business is, looking at it at a WordCamp by WordCamp basis, or even a meetup basis. I know when I worked at WP Engine, we had a play that we were sponsoring, 5 of the top 10 WordPress meetups. And we were going to the top WordCamps versus some of the smaller WordCamps, because I think for us and who our audience was at the time, that through the strategy that we had just, decided on, that made sense for us. But I think if you're, a host versus an agency versus a plugin developer, those are different things to consider, right? Because I mean, even to your point, Bridget, some of the sponsorships can be multiple thousands of dollars. It's a lot to spend, but if your product can resonate with the right people, then maybe that's the right investment. So I think you need to kind of look at the geographic of the location of the event, who's going to, potentially be there. I know for the WordCamps, at least, especially, I appreciate that they always disclose who the attendee list is. Now, it certainly doesn't share, where they're working at all the time, but I think it usually includes like their website, and there's easy tools that you can go scrape the attendee list and kind of do like at WP Engine, we would always marry the attendee list against our customer list. So we could have some sort of guidance of, what percentage of our customers are going to be at this particular WordCamp or not. Should we do something for those particular customers to further market to them? So I think there's definitely some little tools and tricks you can do to take advantage of how you approach a WordCamp in particular.
WordCamps are a different beast. Just from, like as someone who attends WordCamps, you see a lot of the sponsors are basically just hosts, right? That's like a majority of most of the sponsors that are there, which is like, okay, host. And as, someone who's been around and I'm a developer, I know all the hosts that are pretty much out there. Yeah, there's the random ones that will kind of be there that I've never heard of. But I really appreciate LA does this. San Diego, I think, did this or used to do this, where they actually they don't separate out, but like there is a lower tier. Like if you don't mind sharing a table for an entry level price, which is semi-reasonable, if you are a plugin developer who's just starting out, there's enough there, I think, that's justifiable to get a booth, throw up purchase a, banner or something, and it'll help you get your name out there. Like the first San Diego after their hiatus, I started a brand up with my friend Greg Douglas, and we got a table there, and it was affordable enough for us that I managed to, also purchase like a TV and 2 banners so that we could have like a full out, table that looked decent and we could actually talk to people at, and it brought us a lot of brand awareness, which is awesome. Same with LA, they do shared tables, at like $500. That's sub $1,000 for, being in front of people. WP Crowd even did a table 2 years ago. Was it last year? Yeah, last year, where we just had, I just took some money and we just had a table with a TV and like a PlayStation attached to it. Like I wasn't hoping anyone will buy anything from us, but it was nice just to be like, hey, WP Crowd, yeah, come play Tetris.
That brand awareness that you were getting by just having a presence at the event.
Yeah, and it just sucks that like if I want to go to a bigger WordCamp, right, I can't. There's a big jump between $500 and like the $5,000 minimum of some of these camps, and again, that affords a lot of like high-end players, and then hosting, because hosting tends to be the bigger names in the space. Advertising through WordCamp sponsorships like that for a booth that's tough sometimes, especially if you're just starting.
So I know I only went to 11 last year, but some of my friends went to way more. But when we were sponsoring a couple, that we were the only people at the booth, or there was one other place that were Cincinnati, Ottawa. There was 2 booths So there's global sponsors that had done their thing, but they didn't show up because a lot of teams, I know GoDaddy and and Bluehost only have 2 teams. So if there's other camps that weekend, they can't go. So a really good way to get in is to go to the newer, smaller camps, especially because the bigger ones are saturated. We already know about these people. And so we got to talk to everybody. Everybody got to know about Give. And so you've got this saturation because you were there. And in our community, that matters. Showing up matters. So you can leverage that in a different way, but it is considered part of your advertising budget. That was my point.
Yeah,
we sponsor because our livelihoods depend on something that was given for free. So the motivation to give back is a little different than putting up a billboard on a Clear Channel.
Yeah, and I think that's a good strategy for someone. Like, again, if you're just starting out and you have an advertising budget, going to smaller camps, you'll get started at least. And again, it's more affordable. So I'm going to take that as a top tip, right? Like if you want to use advertising, you want to advertise through WordCamps and sponsor them, start with smaller ones. So taking that as a top tip, since we have about 5-10 minutes left, let's go through any other top tips you guys might have for advertising. Like from a business owner point of view, do you guys have any other tips for, forget the large companies, but I'm talking about like grassroots kind of advertising? Like what are the top tips that you have? Like for me, with Facebook advertising, the one thing I learned was start small. If you want to go that route, because it's all about what people like and looking at their interests. Really, that's what it's interest-based. I used to always take one campaign and create multiple like ad groups, right, which are different sets of interests. And I would throw only like $5 at each of them and just over the course of a few days, see which one did better. And then figure out, I had these huge whiteboards in my office and I've tried to figure out which interests were actually getting people to my website. So it really doesn't take all that much money. Like that's a really good way of just starting out somewhere, and you'd get somewhere, you'd start seeing sales after like $5, $10, and then you could start seeing that ramp up a little bit more. So any other like tips you guys might have for where to advertise, how to get going?
I think never forget local, unless you live, where local doesn't make sense. I mean, if you live very rural, yeah. But if you live in a, smaller city or anything, don't forget the local opportunities you have. And, and we go back to the whole thing of networking and going offline, meeting people. I mean, don't waste your time. Be careful the groups you join. Somebody that has been involved with chambers of commerce for 15 years and been on boards and all that, it's another animal. Chambers of commerce, there's a way to, it's very different, but there are there's a lot of ways. And I'm not talking about display advertising and stuff like that, but find other ways you can advertise and build that brand locally, because I think we get in this world of the internet and we think the world's at our fingertips. And a lot of people forget that, we do have some people around us. It just takes some initiative and it takes time. I mean, it's like any community, online community takes time to know everyone. Your local community does.
Bob, are there any places that you've gone to search for like local communities specifically?
I've tried to, over the years, like I said, chambers of commerce, I could do a whole session on chambers of commerce. So I'm going to try to avoid getting into that too deep, but you got to kind of test the waters. Like if you want to join the local chamber, every chamber has its own flavor, its people, its members, everything is different. It may work for you. There's other networks, there's BNIs, there's all those things that really work for some people. And that's a key is, unfortunately, it takes time. It takes paying a due, but you may find that perfect sweet spot in a lot of those local groups. Get online, go to your chamber of commerce and find out if other things are going on. And if you're if you want to get involved in nonprofits, I mean, there's, I belong to Rotary, I belong to a lot of those, and you think, okay, time suck, I'm giving all my time. Again, you've got to kind of test this stuff And you're never going to know till you try it. And if you're completely introverted and you're thinking, my God, I just shiver thinking at this thought of doing this, you got to dive in. You got to dive in at some point. And it may not be for everyone, but the options are there. You just got to kind of explore and talk to people. The more people you get to know, the more opportunities, and they'll share with you, this is going on, this is going on.
So I would say if you're going to advertise for clicks, have a clear call to action. Maybe even a landing page. You can do that in Beaver Builder. And just make sure you're not just wasting it on a page that nobody has any idea of what you're doing. I would really advise to not use industry jargon. If you're trying to get local businesses to hire you as a WordPress developer, most people don't know what that word means. And the general population thinks a developer is somebody who buys land and builds houses on it. So programmer, build websites, find out what the words that real people use that don't work with you. And then use those words. Do you need me to build you a website? They don't care that it's WordPress.
I think just finding the terms, for anyone you're advertising to, find the most common denominator term, the most layman term for what it is you do and offer, and find that. I found that really really helpful with Facebook advertising, because you never know who's going to see your ad. So it's always important to know, all right, I want to make sure that I take this ad and appeal to as many people as possible. I'm not going to say, we've talked a lot about this with whether to say WordPress or not, right? Like, some people love the idea, they know WordPress enough that they're looking for a WordPress designer developer. Some people just want a website, and some people just want sales, right? So maybe your ad should say, hey, do you need more profit, or do you need more sales? Because that's really what they want as a business, not necessarily a WordPress website. That's just a tool to get to the sales. So it's interesting. What to advertise, I think, is almost a whole nother topic of how to create an ad and how to, depending on niche, things like that. Shada, you said you guys did meetup sponsorships. I'm curious how that kind of went, because that was something I've actually never looked into, but I always found interesting. Was there a lot of results from that kind of stuff, or is that purely just brand, giving back to the community?
I think so. My background was I was WP Engine's global events manager for about 3 years. I was with WP Engine for almost 6 years. Started out as an early employee with them. I'm a really big believer that the company grew so successfully just because of guerrilla marketing tactics like sponsoring meetups, where, again, it kind of goes back to, do you have a budget? What is, in your direct ability to kind of go influence? Can you go locally? Are there, for example, in Austin, Dallas, San Antonio, Houston, those are relatively close to me as major markets that I could tap into and sponsor from a meetup perspective. So for us, it was successful, but I think the flip side was it was hard to track, right? So you have to kind of be mindful, especially I think when you're going into events. Events is extremely hard to track unless you're doing things perhaps I know early out in the WP Engine days, we used to hand out free for life hosting accounts. We were tracking them. I had codes associated to it. I can now kind of look back historically and see how many people received or redeemed that code. But kind of outside of being able to track something like that, I don't really know how to directly and confidently say, yes, by sponsoring this meetup or this WordCamp, it actually correlated to a boost in sales, other than doing the long-term play, which was brand awareness and just community building and getting our name out there, which now you kind of highlighted all these WordCamps and meetups are very dominated by hosts. But back in the day when I started, there was really only us, Zippy Kid at the time, which was, now called Pressable. So, and Pagely, I think the market was a lot different when we were getting into doing things like that. Now I would say if you're a host and you're just starting out, for example, unless you have the spend, I don't know if it's as worthwhile or not. So that would be kind of something for you to decide depending on where you're geographically located, what your budget is, what your outcome is trying to be. But I did have another tip that I thought would be worthwhile sharing. So I'm a really big believer and proponent of looking to the application that you're trying to advertise in and looking at what they kind of boost, right? So like every platform has its own preference. So Facebook, for example, really rewards video advertising. So versus posting static images, which you might think, oh, I'm going to just upload this one graphic that I made for Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, taking that little extra time to make something, moving might help boost that engagement. And I think going back to one of the things you mentioned, you can do really low spend just to test out a static image versus a video. And so something that we're practicing right now at Web Dev is we're about to launch a video, but the copy will change. So I think there's little tweaks like that just by doing some research, understanding what that platform likes and how they're going to reciprocate will just help make that investment into advertising, I think, a little bit stronger. And then 2 programs that I use if you're stuck trying to make graphics that look good and are appealing, and they're both free. One is Canva I use for pretty much any type of graphic I need to create. It's super simple. There's a lot of color options and font options, so you don't have to feel like you're making something super stock looking. And then Lumen 5, just getting into creating more video content. Lumen 5 actually will pull your blog post, essentially. Let's say like you create content on a landing page or on your website, it'll pull your blog post and turn it into a video. So there's easy ways to get around that overwhelming hurdle of, I don't want to have to sit there and edit videos to create that content, which is totally me. I hear it all the time. Every marketing event I go to is video, video, video. And I'm like, I don't want to do it. But there's definitely some tools out there that make it, like I said, a little bit easier to ease into. So.
Yeah, those are all great tips. Definitely the video thing on Facebook was a big thing. Like I tried hard when I was testing and learning it, like to get some videos out there. So, it does require a little extra upfront time. Like I love Canva at this point. Like now I just use it for everything.
Yeah.
But,
Totally.
but back when I was first starting out, I was like, sweet, this Canva thing is amazing, except it doesn't do video, right?
Right.
Like it doesn't, if there was a tool like Canva that was for video, I'd be like, sweet, but there wasn't that I found at the time. So it was like, okay, let's throw this into iMovie. Let's try to create something. And so there's a little more upfront time involved with creating your ad, but it's definitely worth it because things like that, you get more engagement out of it. Same with Instagram. I think if you're on stories, things like that, video is going to be a little bit easier and going to get a little more engagement. But it really depends where you're advertising and who you're advertising to. Like some people don't know your demographic basically, and that's hard to say because not everyone knows their perfect demographic. But as you learn who your demographic is, that's actually purchasing things from you, which again, that's where the Facebook pixel really comes in handy. As you're learning who you're selling to, find out what they like the most and use that, leverage that basically.
Just to add on to that thought, look at what people in your same kind of product or service are doing, right? So kind of speaking about Instagram, for me, what works really well to market my food blog is I've completely exposed myself as an influencer, as a figurehead for my brand. Comparatively, I've seen friends who have very large, successful food blogs and food Instagrams where it's literally just photos of food. And so I think if I looked at what they were doing as the only way to do something, maybe just it would resonate or it wouldn't resonate. And so I think being able to have fun with what you're doing is really key. And so for me, it worked to start talking about my life and to share more of the behind the scenes of the product and service that I was trying to sell. And so like you're just saying, kind of just test and see what works. But I think looking at what everybody else is doing and kind of picking and choosing and testing and trialing all those different things, because nothing is cookie cutter, do this and it's gonna, work every time. It really depends on what you're selling and who you're marketing to.
And as a last thought, Roy, make sure that the way you're advertising resonates and fits within your own brand standards.
That's true. Don't, because you don't want to, mess that up.
Otherwise you have cognitive dissonance. So it's important to protect your brand voice. Yeah.
And keep your reputation going. That's important. All right, cool. I'm going to end it there. That was actually end up being a much more intense great conversation than I was expecting. I honestly, for everyone watching, I was didn't have too much planned for this. I was like, advertising, go. So that worked out pretty well. As usual, if you are not following us, make sure to follow us on Twitter. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to subscribe and follow all these lovely people as usual. All our guests are amazing. So make sure to follow them wherever you can find them. And I will see everyone next week.